What's up, YouTube? We're going to have a little discussion today. Today I wanted to talk about, does it matter where the yo-yos are machined? Alright, so let's get into it. So, there's always this sort of underlying or discussion that gets woven into things about where yo-yos are machined. So, is American machining better? Is Chinese machining up to par? What about Japanese machining? Some yo-yos are made in Japan. Those ones are very expensive, though. And I have thoughts on this, and my thoughts, I think, have evolved a little bit. So, let's kind of go back through some history. So, previously, up until pretty recently, actually, last 4 or 5 years, the best yo-yos were made in America. When I was a kid, particularly, Omega made fireballs and stuff in America. Those were the best ones. Those ones held up a lot better than the newer ones. Yo-Yo Jam made everything in America. They were a plastic shop in America. Those were great. Yo-Yo Jam, for the longest time, was some of the best yo-yos ever. The USA-made Dunkins were the way to go, the wooden ones. BC yo-yos, which I love to this day, were made in America. And Tom Kuhn and all that stuff. Those were all American-made yo-yos. Those were wonderful. Yo-Yo Factory initially machined their yo-yos in America as well. Of course, we have One Drop. Duncan made some American metal yo-yos as well, and they brought back the Mayhem, which was also machined in America by One Drop. And so, for the longest time, sort of the best, most legendary yo-yos were made in America. So up until recently, the best yo-yos were made in America. Now, a lot of things have changed as industrialization moves out of America, and China is a very industrial country now. A lot of just machining and things are made in China now. Yo-yos particularly. It's cheaper to make them in China. It just is. For the longest time, Chinese yo-yos were junk. They were associated with sort of the plastic, crappy toy yo-yos you would get at, say, a drugstore or something that would break or just be garbage. And the American ones would be the, robust, professional quality ones. That's not really the case anymore. Now, is American machining better than Chinese machining or something to that effect? It depends on... It's not as cut and dry of an answer. There's no magic in what American machines have versus what Chinese machines have. They're all probably using some version of the same CNC machine. So it's not like we have these magical operators in America versus these, just hoi polloi people who don't give a crap in China. That's not the case. A lot of things come into play here. For starters, when we're talking about American machining now, basically the only really dedicated American yo-yo machine shop is One Drop. So you're really talking about One Drop yo-yos and, whatever else they machine. Like I said, they just did the Duncan Mayhem, and Foxland Precision does some yo-yos. They're very good at it as well. And there's a couple other, people kind of will do, if they have a lathe or access to a lathe and a CNC machine, people will do small runs of their own yo-yos, but far and wide, the vast majority of American yo-yos you're going to see are going to be done through One Drop or Foxland Precision. There's a company, I believe, in Canada as well that does the monkey finger yo-yos. I'm not sure what that company is. Monkey finger stuff is sort of more limited as well. So I'm not necessarily sure. I'm sure, yo-yos aren't their main focus, but they do a very good job as well. So I believe, in my estimation, just because there are so few shops that do them, the consistency coming out of American shops is very good because there aren't a ton of yo-yos coming out of those shops. And the only shop that has a lot of yo-yos coming out of it, One Drop, is super consistent, and they're not only are they some of the nicest people I've ever met, They're some of the hardest working people, and they really, really do care and put a lot of time, effort, thought, and care into the yo-yos. So, One Drop really pumps out probably the most yo-yos in America, and they really care. So, to sort of narrow it down to like American machining and put it all, it's mostly One Drop for the most part. So to say that we have one really great shop in America that makes really great yo-yos, basically, and they put out consistent quality every single time. Now, does that mean that American yo-yos are better all the time? No, not necessarily. There's a lot of shops in China that make yo-yos, and they're sort of all different. Magic Yo-Yo probably is the biggest shop. They make the most yo-yos, but they make tons and tons and tons of yo-yos. They probably produce more yo-yos in a month than One Drop does in an entire year because of how, they machine basically anybody who you think, oh, they have their yo-yos mass produced. It's not like a small boutique 100 run here at a time or so, 100 or 200 run at a time. It probably goes through Magic Yo-Yo. Magic Yo-Yo can do some nice work. They can also do some not so great work. It sort of depends on the level of quality control that you pay for, and then the quality control after the fact. I have some great Magic Yo-Yos. I've played some that are just, okay. It seems like they were just budget design. Nobody really cared about the QC, and it came out. It was fine. It was made cheaply, and that was that. There are some shops in China, like the Metalhead was made at Yo-Yo Empire. Yo-Yo Empire is awesome. Everything they do, Rain City does all their stuff through Yo-Yo Empire. I think that's common knowledge. Every one of them that I've touched, dead smooth, beautiful machining, very nice ano. Even the B grades are really very good too. Very low B grade yield. It's always, if anything, it's usually more with the anodizing than anything else. And I think we'll get into why that's sort of a that's sort of a cost thing, but we'll talk about that with cost later. So, as far as the machining, the actual creation of, taking a big aluminum tube and making it into a yo-yo, there are certainly shops in China that do just as great of a job as One Drop does, or anybody could do. There's a level of excellence. Is the yo-yo smooth? The design is to each his own. Is the yo-yo smooth? Does it look right? Does it play well? And that's sort of, does it play well kind of goes into the design. But does the yo-yo come out smooth? Yes, there are absolutely shops in China that produce very smooth yo-yos very consistently. Like I said, Yo-Yo Empire, none of the bearing seats are overly tight, and it just seems to be a very consistent, high-quality shop. There's other shops like that too. I just know from experience that that's who we worked with, and it was a very smooth process, and the yo-yos came out very, very good with mostly A grades. The only B grade flaws really just ended up being anodizing stuff. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So the next thing we want to talk about is cost. So it clearly costs more money to get American-made yo-yos. It does. You can pay $100, not too often, but you can pay $100 for a monometal made in America. That's not really the case with Chinese monometals. Usually they're between $50 and $75. Price of that's going up, though, because of tariffs. I'm not going to get into a political discussion about it now. I think tariffs are garbage, and they're bad for the economy as a whole. But so the price of Chinese yo-yos is going to go up as well. That's neither here nor there, though. At least the cost of getting them made and getting them imported into America is going to go up. So whomever eats the cost of that, probably the consumer, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. That comes later this year, so be ready for it. Probably early next year whenever those new yo-yos come out. But the cost in America still is a little higher. So not terribly much higher, but a little bit. So One Drop you can get from pretty much anywhere about the $50 mark up to about the $100 mark. They used to have yo-yos that hit the $120, $140 mark. Not so much anymore. Now it's usually between 50 and 90. If you get some, an expensive one drop with a nice splash on it as well, that's also done in America, you're going to pay a little more for that. That might even hit up in the $105, $110 range. But for the most part, you're going to be looking at a price between $50 and $100 for an American-made yo-yo, which, truth be told, it's always worth it. They're not made in huge quantities. They are very well machined, and the QC on them is phenomenal. Whenever you get the chance to get an NQP or a B grade from One Drop or whomever else they might be doing a yo-yo from, usually they're discounted pretty heavily in $45, $50, maybe $60, depending on what it was. It's usually an anodizing flaw, but there's never many of those. So, once they drop, they're usually gone really quick because there's not ever too many of them. They usually get scooped up rather quickly. But you get great yo-yos. Now, as far as Chinese machining is concerned, usually they're done. An American company will pay a Chinese manufacturing company to machine their design, and they'll ship those yo-yos back anodized, and then the American company will go through those yo-yos and either assemble, test, whatever. They'll say, okay, these ones are B grades. We're going to sell these at contests for $20 each. They'll put those in a box. These are the A grades. They send whatever to Yo-Yo Expert, whatever to Yo-Yo Sam, whatever the orders need to be filled. And they take care of that stuff. And then, that's how that goes. It's a bigger process. And this is how a lot of things are machined and done anyway. If you buy action figures, if you buy any kind of toys or electronics or whatever, that's sort of how it works. If it's an American company's design, or if it's designed in America, think like Apple. It'll be made in China, shipped into America, sorted, QC'd a little bit, tested, and then sent out to the distributors, stores and stuff. That's basically how yo-yo companies run as well. Now, are you getting a crappier yo-yo if you buy a Chinese yo-yo versus an American machined yo-yo? No, not necessarily. I feel like because of the amount of yo-yos coming out of China, you sort of get a spectrum. A lot of them, like I was mentioning, Yo-Yo Empire, are very good. Some of them, because they're cheaper and they're made in more mass quantities and just not QC'd as hard, you could get a dud. Totally happens. Had some crappy yo-yos before. It's just a thing. You return them or whatever else. Usually the shops are very good about that. And that's that. It's not to say that all Chinese manufactured yo-yos are crap. They're just not as QC'd as tight because there's more of them and they're mass produced. Anything mass produced isn't going to have as tight of QC as something that's sort of more contained in shop. Anodization is another thing. I will say this out loud. There are a few anodizers here in North America who are just phenomenal artists. And their anodization is great. Think Grunt Bull. How many awesome Grunt Bull things have you seen? Think the G2 Squirrels. Amazing stuff. Beautiful stuff. Not to get into politics or personal inquiries with that, but some beautiful yo-yos came out of that. Monkey Finger Ray up in Canada. Oh my God, I've got some gorgeous yo-yos, some gorgeous monkey fingers that are just breathtaking to look at, and they play really well. So anodization in America. Now you can get stuff anodized anywhere. There's plenty of anodization shops that don't just do yo-yos. But we've really got some artists doing it in America. Usually, if you have the yo-yo anodized in China, it's sort of all in-house. So it's machined in one area and then anodized in another, and the whole anodized yo-yo goes somewhere, and that's that. Particularly for splashes and things like that. I will say that I've very rarely seen Chinese anodization be as good as the best American anodizers. I just haven't seen it. I would say that Top Yo does a pretty good job anodizing. They're probably the most consistently good one that I've seen. But it sort of is all over the place. Some colors are good, some are not. And again, that's sort of a like personal preference, I think. But you know, like I said, I would say that anodizing wise, there are a few guys, the guys who I just named, who are particularly artists about it, and I think that that's sort of their forte, and they really just kind of make it a beautiful piece, in addition to being a yo-yo. So that kind of is, I guess, where if we're going to talk about American versus Chinese machining, you know, that's sort of, I think, where it starts to separate, is with the anodization process. Now, it is a beautiful anodization going to make the yo-yo play any better? No. No, it's not. You can get a black yo-yo that plays just as well as a beautifully anodized yo-yo. And the black yo-yos look great too, and they really do solid colors very well in China. But I would say, if anything, that's really where the difference is in the anodization level of artistry. We'll put it like that. But let me know what you think. I don't think there's much of a difference, particularly in machining. I think we're just very lucky to have one very dedicated, very amazing shop in America with One Drop, and they really do make some of the best yo-yos. I get every one of them. So that's, and sometimes more than one of every one of them. So that's, you know, I clearly like them, but there's a lot of Chinese made yo-yos that I really like too, including the Metalhead, which we had made in China, like I had said, yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Cheers to you. I'll see you next time.